Shador has no off the field things. People who don't watch Shador, they might not know this, but Shador doesn't drink, so as I get older, I realize the importance of young people coming into money who also, consume alcohol could lead to turmoil and just some rough patches. So just not even being a person who consumes alcohol or does drugs or any of those things or likes to hang out in clubs. For me, as I look through things through the lens of how old I am now, those are things that I definitely appreciate. So, I think that's a difference where, Shador doesn't have these off field things, but for some reason, people just have this disdain for Shador that I kind of don't understand because the quarterback that they always go back to, especially in Cleveland, is they always go back to, us. They always go back to Baker. And I'm like, Baker's a cocky quarterback. So confident. My bad. I keep messing that up. I'm not trying to call him cocky. He's a confident quarterback. And I like a confident quarterback. So now, one thing that I think that Browns fans we don't do is we kind of stay in our bubbles and we listen to media. We listen to media that is Cleveland based. One thing that I decided to do was I decided to listen to some of the media and how they're reporting things and how they're looking at things for the Giants because the Giants are picking right behind us. So this kind of gives you a window into how other fan bases are viewing things and also just a window into, what other teams are doing because, you get stuck in that lens of only looking at what the Browns do, but sometimes we got to come outside of that because if you are the best at making the decisions and you need to gather more information, go look at the team that's picking behind you and see what they want you to do. So if the team picking behind you is saying, hey, we want you to pick Abdul Carter, so we got the choice between Shador and Travis Hunter, that tells you something, So just I'm bringing this up before we get to Shador to look at how some Giants media is covering Shador.
2 or 3 guys at that number 3 spot. And if you have a chance to trade back and get value, you do it because we're building.
I'm going to speed this thing up just so y'all know. We're going to go 1.25. If we got to go 1.5, we'll go 1.5. But just a small clip that y'all heard so far. Also, Giants fans are saying, hey, trade back, pass on the generational talent, which people are saying generational talent in Travis and Abdul Carter, and pass up on him and trade back. So I just think it's funny once you come outside of what Cleveland fans are saying and how it's being reported, look at how other teams are looking at this situation too, with Giants fans saying, hey, maybe we should trade back. I think it's a funny thing because a lot of people are saying, oh, we could, Browns fans are saying, oh man, the Giants love Shador, so we could use that as leverage and probably squeeze another second round pick out of him. But then what happens when you look at that team and that team is trying to trade back too? So that plan of trying to squeeze a pick out of them is not there. So let's get to it.
For the future.
This 36 minutes long. We're not going to play the whole 36 minutes.
Not just building to try to win this year. And that's something that Joe Schoen has come out and said. When you have to draft for need, sometimes that bites you in the butt.
I'm gonna stay on you, Pew, and then I got a question for you, LPG. So, all right. So let's say they do. Let's say someone comes and makes an offer they can't refuse, and trade back. They miss out on.
All right, y'all. We're going 1.5. I watch so much stuff on 1.5 because I gotta consume so many things to plan and prepare for the show. So let's go.
And now they are in the second or third tier of draftable quarterbacks: the Jalen Milroes, the Riley Leonards, the Will Howards, those guys. Pew. They drafted Davis Webb in the 3rd round when you were a Giant. They drafted Cal Luletta in the 4th round when you were a Giant, I believe.
I just left, so I missed Cal.
Okay, so you were just left. But Davis Webb going to be a head coach in the NFL one day. But in terms of NFL careers, quarterback, that didn't translate to any wins for the Giants. So if it's a situation where you feel like, all right, they may be trying to give me all types of picks to trade back.
Let me stop this real quick. So it's funny because doesn't it sound like they are saying the same thing that Browns fans say? They're talking about basically just the dysfunction and not being able to draft a good quarterback. So we just kind of think, we look at things in a bubble and we just think we're the only ones going through this and all these other teams have it figured out and they're doing so well. And then you look at the Giants. I made a comment a couple of weeks ago and I was like, hey, if I'm looking at it, the Titans don't have this track record in the last 20 years of just being the best at picking quarterbacks. Look at the last 2 they pick. Malik Willis and Will Levis, so and they're drafting a quarterback number 1 overall. So That tells you they haven't had the most success. Then you look at the Giants who are picking after us, and they're going to say in this clip, I don't know if we're going to get there, but they're talking about, man, we ain't been able to pick a quarterback since we had Eli. So once you just start going down the line, it would have been the Raiders too. The Raiders would have been another one of those teams where it's like, we haven't really been able to figure out quarterback. Look at New England. I believe New England's picking at 4. New England, until they got Drake May last year, since Tom Brady left, they haven't been able to figure out quarterback. Jacksonville is in between. I think Jacksonville is 5. They got Trevor Lawrence. They just signed Trevor Lawrence to that big deal. It's question marks surrounding Trevor Lawrence, who was supposed to be this can't miss prospect. So we just kind of look at our situations in a bubble and just say, man, our stuff is so bad. When you start looking at these other teams, especially when you're in the top 5, 6 picks of the draft, all of us bad. So, just don't think that, oh man, they're picking 1 pick behind us and they're in a better situation than us. Nope, not the case. So let's get back to it.
All business ain't good business. Do you still have to, is there a chance you might have to turn that down to go with Shador if you've identified him as that's your guy at 3?
Well, look, I'm not.
Also, fair use for all the videos I used tonight, fair use for all the videos that I reacted to.
In those meeting rooms to see how we value that position on the team. But you think about you bring in a Russ and you bring in a Jameis, that's signaling to the fan base, hey, we have guys that we know are going to be our starting quarterbacks. We don't have to press. We can go out there tomorrow and play a football game with the team that we have. Russell's going to be your starting quarterback. Jameis is going to be your backup. You do not have to force a quarterback. If you don't think this is the deepest class, I do a show with Jay Gruden and Colt McCoy, 2 guys that have played quarterback and evaluated quarterbacks at a high level. If they were putting these quarterbacks in with last year's class, Cam Ward wouldn't even have been a top 3 pick, and now he's going to go number 1 overall. They wouldn't have had Shador in their top 5. So I don't know if this is the strongest quarterback class. What I do know, you got a ton of defensive linemen, which I know.
I'm going to pause him right here. A lot of people saying it's not a strong quarterback class, which, yeah, that's cool. That's the thing to say. If you are picks 1, 2, or 3, I think you're definitely looking at the top 2 quarterbacks and determining if they're going to be worth it. Outside of that, like, I think just the bashing of this quarterback class and comparing it to last year's class, it does nothing. It's kind of just air because there's no way we're going to be able to take this class and infuse it into that class and see when they would be picked and all this stuff. Like, even though Shador ended the year last year, I think they won 4 games, the way he did and, his numbers he put up, he still would have been a pretty high draft pick. Like, I think people are just kind of, they kind of just blending these things together and they're making points that kind of don't matter because it's no way that we can go back and put these guys in last year's draft. Last year's draft happened. We got to move forward with this year's draft. That's the thing I've been hearing a lot, and it's just one of those things. It's just like that doesn't matter. We can go based on what is, not on coulda, woulda, shoulda, and that's a coulda, woulda, shoulda that a lot of people bring it up, and it's like, why?
That is always a good thing to have defensive linemen on you. I don't think this O-line class is as deep as it was last year either. I don't think Will Campbell and Kelvin Banks from Texas are as good as the guys were last year. Joe Alt was in a league of his own. And then you look at Olu Fashanu down there at the Jets. He was in a league of his own. So when you look at where the strengths are in the draft, the good teams aren't always reaching. The good teams take the best player that's on the board at that time. And I think the Giants set themselves up to take the.
I got to stop him again. That's another thing I would disagree with. You look at the top 3 teams in the AFC. Top 3 teams in the AFC, we would say Kansas City, Buffalo, and how am I missing it? Baltimore. I believe all 3 of those teams traded up to get their quarterbacks. So it's just like people have revisionist history when they speak on things, and it's like you don't have to create a new narrative because we know exactly what happened. So we know that Kansas City traded up for Pat Mahomes. We know that Baltimore traded back into the first round, and I believe Buffalo traded up for 7 to get Josh Allen. So it's just like, or Josh Allen fell to them at 7. I might be missing that, but it's like we kind of just, people say these things and we keep repeating these things, but then these things, they tend to kind of not be true, like, so I don't know. Some of these times I just think it's just a reach.
The best player or the best situation possible at 3, which is a great place to be if you're a Giants fan.
Joe.
Yeah, I'm.
Also, let me say this. I think this is what loser teams who, not losers, well, I mean, I guess they are losers because they're picking in behind the draft, but teams that have losing seasons, I think they try to lean on these things like it's like it's a proper way to follow in the footsteps of these good teams. And the problem with that is, how are you going to get the quarterback? Like, how are you going to get the Patrick Mahomes? How are you going to get the Lamar Jackson? How are you going to get the Josh Allen? So kind of doing that comparison thing and saying good teams don't do this. Yeah, the Chiefs haven't reached because they got Patrick Mahomes. But until they had Patrick Mahomes, they had to reach. So it's one of those things where I think like teams who just haven't been winning in a long time, they say these things like it's some blueprint, but the real blueprint is figure out the quarterback position and then build out from there. That's the true blueprint. If you're not saying that's the blueprint, then all this other stuff don't matter.
I agree with them, except when you're in a position to draft that quarterback, like London said, then maybe it's not always best available. Maybe you do take that shot. I mean, go back to you guys, you're talking about trading. I mean, we don't have to go back too far to look at a general manager that wouldn't pick up the phone at 2 and was set at picking his person no matter what the call was, Brandon. Just like you said, sometimes you're just not going to pick up the phone. I think the Giants learned their lesson that phone's going to be picked up no matter what, whether you got a Herschel Walker type deal, whether you got a Ricky Williams type deal on your hands, and maybe you go out because obviously the Giants need more than just 1 or 2 pieces. I totally agree with what Justin said. You're looking at Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston and Tommy DeVito over Daniel Jones, DeVito, and who was it, their quarterback? And Drew Lock. All right. So, you're talking about a huge upgrade. I know there have been some talk that it's not such a big upgrade. It's a tremendous upgrade. And then for the Giants fan base to get angry at that, I mean, the Giants are in a no-win situation. They addressed the room. They made it a little bit easier for themselves come draft day. Okay, now it's not 100% you're going to take a quarterback. I still think it's 65 to 70% that they are going to go that way. I've said it in the beginning. I'm sticking to that. And that may be leaving an Abdul Carter or a Travis Hunter on the board.
And I know.
I think that's funny. It's just I always tell people go outside of your circle so you can just hear perspective from other people. So they're saying that Giants fans aren't happy with what they've done to the quarterback room, which it's a no-brainer. I mean, I don't think Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, or Danny DeVito are Super Bowl quarterbacks. But to say they're not better than Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, and Danny, I think it's DeVito. Danny DeVito is crazy. They're definitely more accomplished quarterbacks than the other 3. So it's like that's a clear upgrade. So it's just funny, like, when you just look around in these other situations, it's not all glitz and glamour. It's people who just is frustrated because they want to see a winner, so they're just scratching and clawing for any way that they could try to get to this win. So,
I know Joe Shane said it, how he's put them in a position to not have to take quarterback. Pew, you just said the same thing. But Joe, we saw planes being flown over top of MetLife Stadium. Abdul Carter is not going to get the people off their back. Travis Hunter might, right. But that quarterback of the future is going to be at least a draftable quarterback of the future. It will be that person who kind of gets the fan base off of Joe Shane, Brian Dable's back.
So you kind of hear that? It's the same thing with Browns fans. Browns fans are like, hey, we need some excitement. If you watch UCSS, they're talking about Bulls saying, hey, man, Abdul Carter it's gonna be like, yeah, he's good, but we had the best edge rusher in Myles Garrett, and we won 3 games. So we get another edge rusher. I don't think Abdul Carter is going to equal 7 or 8 wins in his first year. I think he could take us from 3 to 5 wins, with just more steady quarterback play. So I don't think that's a big move the needle thing. If we didn't take Shedeur and we took Travis Hunter, I think fans will be more accepting of that because Travis Hunter is kind of that true unknown of him playing both ways in the NFL. So I think fans will be more receptive to that. But I think not taking Shedeur and taking Abdul Carter, fans will just be like, what are we doing? So, I mean, you see that they sound just like if you just made this color orange and you get that guy a brown hoodie, you would think they were talking about Browns fans. And that's just to show you, like, go outside the window and see how things go. So let's see if there's any more we're going to play for this.
So are their hands still kind of tied to where they do have to?
Look, I'm agreeing with you. I think that shot has to be made. That doesn't, and you know what? It's like X amount of people out there will be absolutely furious because what if you swing and miss when you had a generational talent on the board and you went and took a swing at a quarterback that wasn't supposed to go at number 3 in some people's minds. But you know what? You take that swing, and if you miss, you swing again.
Yep. Pew, you
I like that approach. I mean, you just got to swing until you get it right. It's one of those things where, like, you can't let fear determine how you make the decision. You got to take all the information in, then make the decision. So I just wanted to give you all a glimpse, like, outside of, Cleveland media, how people are viewing situations with their teams. So I just think this was a good thing where, you see the Giants picking right behind us, which is the perfect team to be looking at because they need a long-term quarterback answer. The Browns need a long-term quarterback answer. So, just looking at how they're viewing things. So let's get to it. Now,